squaring off on the standard table. And this one figures to be the closest matchup. I think it's the key mat because this one can go either way. It seems really key that Corey wins this match.
I completely agree with you. I think all of them are fairly close with Rubin, Ragan. My mouth tried to say both of those at once. And DelValle. I mean, really want to...
So Rubin and Ragan's matchups are all pretty close.
Look, sometimes my mouth doesn't work, Matthias, and that's the problem here.
This is the closest of the three. See, look at the resemblance. Look at that. Okay, so we see Suncrown Raptor. Okay, hold that.
What? No, that's Corey Baumeister.
Hold that in your head. Okay. Now we zoom out. I can't even tell the difference. Which one is this? Is this Suncrown Raptor?
Are we going to zoom out or no?
My point exactly.
Do 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 do.
It's too weird. I didn't know he was already on a magic card.
Didn't know Baumeister was a dinosaur name, but here we are.
Did he win an invitational? And then he submitted Suncrown Raptor?
What? No, that's just out of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Corey will be on the play. They are the number 2 seed, along with teammates. So
very adjustable, comfortable Carnox chairs being adjusted.
For Nico DelValle, Boros Feather, creatures he has, they aren't going to outsize the dinosaurs without some help. You see Dreadhorde Arcanist, Adonto Vanguard, 10th District Legionnaire, Feather, Tajik, and then one-ofs of Tomek and Aurelia. Key cards that he needs here.
So Aurelia is going to be very good. Adonto Vanguard is not going to be very good because it can't attack very effectively into the creatures that Baumeister will be presenting, and it also is bordering unplayable on defense.
Yeah, that's true. If they're tagging with a 5-power creature, it's profitable to block. So you can block and pay 4.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't like that.
It doesn't trample.
Well, that's a good thing. Dinosaurs don't generally trample, so I think that'll be okay.
Well, so what I would recommend here is reading the dinosaurs. And
look, if I'm playing dinosaurs, I'm not reading my cards.
That's fair.
Viewed with dinosaurs finds unclaimed territory.
So a lot of what DelValle wants to be finding here are specifically 10th District Legionnaire as well as the namesake Feather. Those are the things that are going to actually give him the ability to go over the top of what Baumeister's doing.
The only removal in Corey's main deck, 2 copies of Collision, 2 copies of Savage Stomp.
And one Domri Anarch of Bolus. So that Collision could actually end up being incredible against Feather.
I mean, absolutely. They line up. Seen Corey. This deck, I don't think I've seen Jund Dinosaurs without Otepec Huntmaster yet. So I just think that this deck is just incredible because it always has this card on turn 2. And when it does, it is a really good deck. So last time Corey made this, he untapped and made 20 power worth of creatures. So Nico's going to shock it.
Ooh, that's like the second best shock artwork.
Which one do you like?
Shock-a-tog.
Okay, I was going to say the one where it hits. But no one does that. It's just teaching people. I didn't like that one because you really shouldn't shock their Psychotog. Look, that just does. It's not going to end well. It's like 1 red, exile 2 cards from a target player's graveyard. They choose.
It's it could be better, admittedly.
Reckless Rage and Dreadhorde Arcanist.
Okay, so this is a good start. So this Dreadhorde Arcanist now has a couple cards to choose from that it can flash back next turn. And if a Feather comes into play, DelValle will get to put it back in his hand as well.
Yeah, this is great. If DelValle can just keep pace by using removal spells, He'll definitely win this one. Now, this was the card I was worried about, Ripjaw Raptor, because at some point red removal doesn't work against dinosaurs.
Exactly. Both of the cards in DelValle's graveyard are not big enough to kill this Ripjaw Raptor on their own, and this Ripjaw Raptor will already draw a card if any red removal is pointed towards it.
Raptor gets angry when you try to set it on fire. So it gets so angry. It gets so angry that it draws cards.
Yeah. It gets enraged.
That's what I do when I'm angry. Just start swiping cards off the top of the deck.
Don't remind me.
Tenth District Legionnaire. Looks like it's going to join the table for Nico. And then Defiant Strike, going to be our first one. So it's going to start to grow. You get to scry 1 before the resolution of Defiant Strike. So scries, gets a 1/1 counter, and then he will draw the card.
And we see a feather hiding out in DelValle's hand here, so it's not a spot where you really want to have to blow this Defiant Strike.
Maybe he's thinking that he can just use resources that way because Arcanist will get it back later.
Correct. And another thing that you don't really want to be doing is exposing Feather without something like God's Willing.
Right.
So it's entirely likely that he's just looking for that 4th land here.
He's kind of hanging out, waiting for the land to show up, hoping he doesn't take too much damage.
Correct. And there's also a point where even if this Ripjaw Raptor is going to be drawing a lot of cards for Baumeister, then that's fine if you're planning to be the aggressor in the matchup and go under Corey a bit anyway. A lot of the time, you're not actually going to be able to grind through every resource that the dinosaur deck has. It's more a matter of trying to actually just win on the battlefield while they're still building.
Corey going to settle in for defense as well. It's Otepec Huntmaster and Shifting Ceratops. Now the mid-range decks have reached this point where it feels like they're going to fight to see whose creatures are bigger. Currently that's Corey's, but I don't know if it stays that way.
Right. The more turns that DelValle gets with this 10th District Legionnaire, the less manageable it's going to become.
How do you feel about casting Ceratops into Arcanist with Reckless Rage in the graveyard?
That's tough. There's a point where it likely just says that Baumeister just needs to cast these spells at some point.
I guess what I like is if Nico takes that play, attacks with Arcanist, Reckless Rages down the Ceratops, then Corey can block the Arcanist with Ripjaw Raptor, which means he'll draw a card.
Correct. And the other thing that you can think about here, all right, so we also see this Reckless Rage coming down from hand for Nico.
Right, so we get 1 removal, the Legionnaire grows.
And now this actually gives him a way to maybe start attacking since he has a God's Willing in his hand.
I was looking at that too, and I think that's the line you were talking about with Feather. It's why we haven't seen Feather on the battlefield yet. He really wants a 4th mana.
Correct. And now there's actually a spot where even without that 4th mana, DelValle is able to kind of weave himself in a position where he can start applying pressure.
2nd Legionnaire for DelValle. The Boros troops are training. See, they need to fight down the dinosaurs. That's why they're inventing weapons. This dinosaur is hard to fight. This is a large one. Hold on.
Big dinosaur.
We will need the whole legion to take it down.
We will need more than a legion to take down Galta.
For Galta Primal Hunger. Size check. It is a 12/12 trample. These Legionnaires are 2 and 4, so they need to go train a bit. And Galta has haste.
Oh yeah, don't forget.
It's a fast dinosaur.
Oh yeah.
Nico down to 8. 4th land. Clifftop Retreat, no damage. Now he has time for Feather.
That's a start.
But, oof, it is... Boy, did he take some damage.
There's a God's Willing. There's a God's Willing in hand here, so Nico is not out of it.
So God's Willing saves a creature, but with how Trample works, it doesn't suck up extra damage. The Trample still goes over the top. So
you can
he has
block
to be
with
clever.
A lot of creatures.
Yeah, all right.
a lot of creatures up in front, and then you can God's Willing whichever one you need to save the most, and then you may get a shot at killing this Galta here. So right now there's 4, 5, 6, 7 power. Feather makes 10. God's Willing only makes 11. Oh, that's so awkward.
So they can't actually kill Galta. There's enough toughness to save Nico, but if he loses his whole board, that's not going to matter much.
So on the other hand, Corey is at 12. Let's see if...
You're seeing if he can just win.
Is there a way that he can possibly just win the game from here?
Well, in play, he has 7 power, so he'd have to make 5 more. Defiant Strike makes 2. I don't think it's there. Here's Feather. If his hand was 3 1-mana instants, it would 3 spells that target, it could do it.
Correct.
2 of one of them is Defiant Strike, but I don't think he has that. He could attack and hope that Defiant Strike drew into Defiant Strike to make it lethal, but so much has to go right there.
Yeah, that's pretty shaky.
Yeah, at that point, that's the last-ditch effort. You don't want to go there unless you have to.
Right. This is just such a difficult stay for DelValle.
It's like Tajik, the last card in his hand. A good attacker, but
not
maybe
good
need to
on
block.
The way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Feather's the play. His hand is God's Willing. And he's just going to have to pass. And the hard thing is, sometimes you make this when you don't have enough of a block and you hope your opponent screws up. But it's very difficult for Corey to screw up here because all Corey has to do is say, attack with Galta.
As a matter of fact, I would love to enter the declare attacks.
Right. In Corey's spot, he may even, because Galta's so big, I think he can even send Ripjaw Raptor.
Right, and maybe there's even a spot where you can put Dreadhorde Arcanist and the small 10th District Legionnaire in front of Galta, and then you take 7 and go to 1, and then have Feather and 10th District Legionnaire on the ground. You can God's Willing on second main, which makes the Legionnaire 5 power. That's so tough. That's just not quite it. You could God's Willing the Dreadhorde Arcanist to make it survive the Galta. You get your God's Willing back. You then Defiant Strike the 10th District Legionnaire with the Dreadhorde Arcanist, attack next turn. Get to cast the God's Willing from your hand, which is another scry. Give it protection from green, so Ripjaw Raptor can't block it. That is a total of 8, 9,
Still not
10
enough.
with the Defiant Strike. Well, it's only 1 Defiant Strike away from lethal.
Right, so then we're into these chaining Defiant Strikes, perhaps.
Well, there's one in the graveyard, though, because of the Dreadhorde Arcanist. So if you can just find 1 more Defiant Strike or 2 things that enable the or trigger the
2
big
targeting
10th District
spells.
Legionnaire, correct, then this is there's actually a line here.
So here's a swing. 2 green creatures come in, Galta and Ripjaw Raptor. DelValle is at 8, so he's going to have to put some blockers in front of that Galta. He gets his God's Willing back because of Feather. Still a card in Corey's hand. He's hoping it's nothing like Collision. If it is, that's going to make this a lot tougher.
Right. At that point, the game is just out of reach. There's not really a way that you can block around that card, because you could just Collision on Ripjaw Raptor instead if you put a bunch of things in front of Galta, and that's going to be the 8.
Triple block in front of Galta. 4 damage coming through. He doesn't want to enrage the Ripjaw Raptor. So he's already going to go to 4. This is 9 toughness. So a trample of 5, or 3 rather, with the 4 means he goes to 1 if nothing changes. Looking at a different block now. All right. 10th District Legionnaire, the largest one in front of Ripjaw Raptor. Maybe he's going to try to save that one.
I think the thing I would have liked to see here is the big 10th District Legionnaire in front of Galta, the little 10th District Legionnaire in front of Ripjaw Raptor as a chump block, and then God's Willing your big 10th District Legionnaire. It becomes a 5/5, and then you take 7.
Well, it looks like he's going to do this, but he's going to use that 5/5 to outgrow Ripjaw Raptor and actually win the combat. Though, I get your point.
Use your Feather this way, though.
Right, and killing Ripjaw Raptor doesn't actually matter here because
You have to win next turn
anyway. It's already tapped. That'll work. It goes to a 5/5. Scry is to the bottom. That was off the Legionnaire. Now Scry off God's Willing. Ripjaw Raptor is going to take damage, so Corey draws a card. God's Willing going to come back end step from Feather's trigger. And it was a block of 5, so Galta trampled over for 7. I believe Nico down to 1. He's going to have to find 12 damage in here. It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, this is really hard. Oh, he may have missed the Feather trigger since the card actually went to his graveyard, and he may not have announced Feather, which exiles the card as it resolves.
That does depend on what he said.
Correct. Right. This looks like
if you placed it in, and that's our thing. So the judge can rule here based on what he said. Now, if he said nothing and placed the God's Willing in his graveyard, he's probably going to lose this call.
Correct.
Because if the Feather trigger resolves, the card shouldn't ever touch the graveyard. It goes instead to exile, and that's what the judge is going to rule. Because the card is touching the graveyard and was placed there, the ruling is that he did not miss Feather. In that case, Corey gets to decide whether or not to put the trigger on the stack, and we know how Corey's going to decide.
Yeah, that's so brutal, but it's understandable when it's this high stakes.
And as it is, looking at the post-combat Regisaur Alpha, I don't think it really matters. I don't see 12 damage in here for Nico.
Correct. There's a green blocker, there's a mono red green blocker, a mono red blocker. God's Willing is not going to do it there.
So Corey Baumeister takes the first game of that match and the first game of the finals, up 1-0. Everyone else still in game 1.
Wow, that was just a lot. I mean, that was kind of how he broke it down before. Galta dominated. God's Willing looked like it was going to be able to hold everything off, but all of a sudden there was a 12-12 with haste.
And we've seen that, especially one thing that I think Jund Dinosaurs is capitalizing on right now is the format is full of red removal spells, and there's no black removal spells to be seen. We don't have these Vraska's Contempts just hanging out.
All right, let's check out this sideboard really quick. All right.
Okay, how many kill Galta?
Okay, hold on. How do you feel about Baffling End on Galta?
Well, sometimes they pay 2 mana to cast Galta, but that's not how that works.
Okay, so Deafening Clarion, Galta, go.
Just 1. We are 3 Deafening Clarions short.
Okay, Fry, how do you feel about that on
Galta is not white or blue.
All right, Lava Coil.
Well, there's 3 of them. If you draw them all, you can kill Galta.
Ooh. So, this one Prison Realm is really Nico's only out to it. And I know it sounds like we're being a little bit derogatory towards him here, but this is more to say that the cards that Nico is playing, he's successful, right? He is in the finals of an enormous team event. This is a successful deck. This is a good deck right now. This is what it looks like, and this is what Jund is beating up on, the fact that these are good cards right now.
So there is another way to beat Galta here, which is Galta requires you to have other creatures in play. If you can kill every non-Galta creature, you can strand Galta in Corey's hand, and that might be his best way to try to do this.
Right, you just have to hope that Corey doesn't draw things like Ripjaw Raptor, and that you can use Lava Coil on Marauding Raptor instead.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ripjaw Raptor has been in Standard for almost 2 years now, and has not seen much play at all. Just a 4/5 for 4, in a format going all the way back to a year ago when we had Sealaways, Vraska's Contempts. Just not a very good card. Right now, that 4/5 for 4 is just really hitting the sweet spot with the decks people are playing.
Right, and the big switch now is basically that there's also what's effectively a mana creature in Marauding Raptor that lets you immediately draw a card with the Ripjaw Raptor. That's just such a big deal here.
Well, they sideboard for game number 2. Next weekend, the SCG Tour continues on. We have our Modern Open. That is going to be SCG Columbus.
So one of the big issues that I think with the plan that you mentioned before about killing everything and then hoping that Galta doesn't come down as a result, that's sort of what Nico started to do that game, right? We saw Shock take down Otepec Huntmaster, and then we saw Marauding Raptor get taken down by...
Reckless Rage, yeah.
Exactly, and then a Ripjaw Raptor happened.
And you just can't kill it.
And then a Shifting Ceratops happened, and then Galta happened, and that was it.
So new plan. Instead of killing Corey's creatures, then, you kill Corey.
Boom. Love it. Bingo. You know the best counterspell? Your opponent being at 0 life. That's the best counterspell.
So, what cards help him do that?
The creatures. So, things like...
Second Aurelia?
Second Aurelia is great. His evasion. One of the problems that we saw towards the end of that last game is that Corey's battlefield was so gummed up, Nico didn't have attacks anymore. Aurelia is good at dodging creatures on the ground. You can also make a very strong case for Gideon because it can attack with impunity into things. Like, it is not worried about getting blocked, and eventually it's also able to destroy a Galta.
I just have this picture in my head of Gideon wielding a sword, just hacking away at dinosaurs. I could see it. It's a good movie.
That's the kind of movie. Yeah. It's your favorite movie, Matthias. We know what you're looking for in the hotel TV later.
You know, it's like where you see all these like people with, you know, they're like throwing nets and grappling hooks at a giant dinosaur, and he's just ripping the town apart, and the peasantry are all coming together trying to...
I can picture it now. There's like a round table of knights trying to figure out what they're going to do, and just Gideon kicks the door in, puts the black blade through the table, and just it zooms in on his eyes, and he says, "I'm going in." And then it cuts to the build-up.
Who is with me?
Scene. Who's with me?
Leads the troops.
Everyone's quiet, and all of a sudden, the oldest knight of the round table stands up and just says, "I."
And then you know it's done. Then
exactly,
it's just everyone's...
That's it. One by one, people slowly stand up and nod.
Now,
or instead of "I," just says, "I've had a good life."
On Corey's side, he actually has some good removal of his own cast downs. 3 of them. I think those will come in.
Cast down's going to be great. So it's not very good against the card Feather, but it's very good against 10th District Legionnaire, and it's also very good against Dreadhorde Arcanist.
If Corey can just call a truce for the first 2 turns, you know, trade removal spells with creatures and then start playing creatures on 3 mana, I think he's at a pretty big advantage.
For the most part, that's true. 10th District Legionnaire coming down on 2 can completely swing things for DelValle, though, because that does give it time to start outgrowing the creatures that Baumeister plays. Part of the problem that we saw last game is that 10th District Legionnaire was a 4-4 in the face of a 4-5, but the game's completely different if it's a 5-5 during all of that.
Okay, so answering little things. He still has to watch out for the flyers, which he has his collision in the main deck for. Aurelia and Feather. We expect 2 Aurelia in Nico's deck post-board. Likely he's still going to keep those Savage Stomps in as well.
Right, that's one that just is actually able to deal with things on the battlefield, and Corey's removal is going to be a little bit better than DelValle because Corey's deck is more redundant than DelValle's is.
4-4-4-4. Yeah.
A lot of it is just that there aren't as many moving parts. The Boros Feather deck has a few creatures. I mean, it has a good number of creatures, but it needs several of them at a time to be good. Dreadhorde Arcanist isn't going to win the game by itself. The same can be said about 10th District Legionnaire.
Yeah, Arcanist needs spells in the graveyard. 10th District needs spells in the hand. Aurelia needs another creature on the battlefield first. These are all good things, but just it has to come together. Whereas, you know, Ripjaw Raptor needs 4 mana.
That's a combo.
That's it. then you have a Ripjaw Raptor.
You got it.
We have our next result in after a long-fought Game 1. Corey's teammate Pete Ingram takes Game 1. That one we certainly think could be an upset.
Yeah, that one's really tough. So when the games go long, it's because the decks are good at trading resources, and that's going to favor the control deck frequently. But there are cards like True Name Nemesis that the 4-color control deck will eventually lose to and don't really have any great answers to in the main deck.
Mulligan to 6 for Nico, and looks like Corey is going to mulligan here. Ben Ragan, Shaheen Soorani still in game 1. That's likely good news for Shaheen, but hard to say.
Yeah, it's really tough because the decks are both so good at grinding where Chalice of the Void can muck up things a lot.
If there's just chalices on some key numbers, then the game can really go long and still be in Eldrazi Tron's favor. 5-card hand Corey's going to try for.
It's even possible if it's an untimed round, if there's something like a lattice lock going on, where Shaheen's going, all right, show me.
And the clean sweep now completed. Shaheen does take game 1 of the Modern table. Things are looking good here. Corey Baumeister in his debut open here on the tour. Yeah.
I guess he's doing okay so far.
He's really good. I had the privilege of playing Magic growing up in the same area as Corey. And yeah, this isn't surprising.
Yeah, I heard from my friend Matthias that he's pretty good.
He's pretty good. Played a Team GP with him once. That was humbling. You know, you know when you're sitting next to someone and eventually they start watching games from behind you, and then you just like, at some point you're just like, oh, this is so embarrassing. Because they're just,
yeah.
You're just making a fool of yourself, and you know they know, and neither of you are saying it because you're friends.
Yes.
But you don't, yeah.
One of the times I played Legacy for Brad Nelson on Standard and Brian Braunduin in Modern.
Commune with Dinosaurs for Corey. Yeah,
anxious
there we go.
Actually all day.
I played a ridiculous combo deck because then maybe he wouldn't know what the play was.
That's what I did.
There we go. It didn't
I played
work.
Legacy Elves. They're just like, have you used Quirion Ranger yet? I'm like, just give me a minute.
Nico, a land-heavy hand here he has kept. Corey finds a Regisaur Alpha. Looks like lands 2, 3, and 4 for Nico, maybe even 5. Draws 10th District Legionnaire, a huge draw for the turn.
Oh, that's so good here. This is exactly the start that DelValle wants.
And Corey, and this makes sense, right? He kept one land commune because he's on a Moldify.
Right, no, you have to. If you think a 4-card hand is going to have, that land, then you might as well just keep this hand since commune lets you keep C5 cards anyway. All right, we might have a game on our hands. Rootbound Crag coming down for Corey Baumeister.
Otepec Huntmaster. Corey does find the land, but yeah, Tomic, Distinguished Advocate. Right now it's just a 2-3. God's Willing on the Legionnaire. That's on upkeep. Doing that while he's tapped out. Gets a...
Likely just digging frantically for a removal spell. You saw Corey miss that land drop. Really wants to find something to do here.
And Lava Coil the top card, so he decides to keep it on top with both scries because he sees his opponent is down on mana and he'd like it to stay that way.
Yeah, I like this play. It's likely going to impact the clock a good bit to go ahead and just get this in while he can. He has another God's Willing in his hand, so that one was a bit extra as it was.
Marauding Raptor from Corey.
And this is one of the things that puts this Jund Dinosaur deck over the top now, is you have things like Otepec Huntmaster, Marauding Raptor, these cards that actually translate into the mid-game, but also play in the early turns.
Nico draws up to 2 cards here. One draws planes for the turn. No help there, but he attacks in for 5 more. Corey down to 6. And Nico is down to 1 card. If Corey can manage to stabilize, his draw was Commune with Dinosaurs. He'll look for a land here.
Corey's got a lot of work to do. This Tomic is going to kill him in 3 turns.
Right. You really feel like he needs to find a land here and have... If he finds a swamp and like maybe cast down the Legionnaire here, that would be a start.
Right. That would be fantastic. It's awkward. Again, Tomic is another card that can't be killed by cast down.
Yeah, he would need Savage Stomp or Collision.
Right, and we know the last card in DelValle's hand is another copy of God's Willing, so that doesn't even feel great.
Corey finds Dragon Skull Summit, but that does not enter the battlefield untapped. So it sets him up for next turn, assuming there is a next turn. So he's trying to figure out what he can play around. If he has Savage Stomp costs only a single green if you target a dinosaur, so that could play here.
The big thing here is he wants this extra damage from attacking, or if he wants to go for killing the 10th District Legionnaire instead.
So stomp on the Legionnaire, but God's Willing will
Let's see what
it.
he names. Because there's an interesting point where if you just name blue with God's Willing, you just kill the raptor.
Fight.
It fights, but it's a 3-4 versus your now 4-4.
Oh, he should just let them fight, huh?
Right.
Let's see if he does it. That is a, yeah.
Yep,
yeah, he does.
Yep.
He said, that is nice.
Oh.
Does not name green, or I guess he could name red.
Right. Red works as well.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't name green. Green is actually the worst color he can name there.
You know what? I agree. Savage Stomp sounds good.
These creatures should fight. And
funny, I wished I had a prey upon, and here we are.
So Nico on the board. Gets a cheeky game too, though. They'll take it.
And even though Corey was on a mulligan, we also saw DelValle kind of stumble a little bit. He drew more lands than he wanted and didn't have too much action of his own. But the core idea is that game went exactly how Nico wants games to go.
Right. So because he gets a creature down first and then double God's Willing with a removal spell. That seems about right.
Right. He just had pressure to put Corey in a spot where he had to expose himself to getting blown up by a God's Willing, and then did.
Right. Probably back on the play for the third game. It's interesting we mentioned that we thought this was a must-win for Corey. With the way the matches are shaping up, maybe that's not the case. Maybe his teammates can win it.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, we saw an upset last round on Corey's portion of the table, so really those things that could happen anywhere. That's Magic.
Looks like we have some re-sideboarding, perhaps. All right, deck lists are gone. These players are going to be ready. Between matches, in the finals, they do get access to each other's deck lists, but not during the game. So the judge will take them before they present. So we saw there in Nico's draw the power of flyers in the matchup. Tomic actually looked to be a pretty big concern for Corey. So I'm really trying to decide just what Savage Stomp was going to name.
Right, because there is a point where even if you take out this ground creature, you're still not going to be able to block this Tomic. And if you can't close the game out in X amount of turns, you'll just die. It takes Nico 3 more combat steps for that Tomic to single-handedly seal the deal. And Jund isn't exactly good at answering that without something like Collision.
Sevens each here. Baumeister back on the play. Looks like Corey got a close one. On Nico's side, we see Dreadlord Arcanist, God's Willing, 3 lands. Second God's Willing, it looks like. We know the last card is probably still a keep.
It's tough on Nico's draw because it looks like he has the Guildgate draw, as we call it. He has Temple of Triumph, Clifftop Retreat, Clifftop Retreat. And when you're already on the draw and you're an aggro deck, that could end up feeling like you're going third.
I just want to correction there. That second, it's actually God's Willing Arcanist Adonto Vanguard. Even with the all-tapped lands draw, it feels like it's too good to throw back.
Yeah, that is pretty tough. That is pretty good at attacking.
Temple of Triumph from Nico. Both players keeping on 7s.
Corey leading on a Rootbound Crag as well means that it may just be both players kind of playing a turn behind.
Oh, we see again Otepec Huntmaster. This is just the best card in the deck.
Unclaimed territory onto kind of showing us why that Rootbound Crag had to come down first.
Another temple for Nico, so you're right. It's the all-tap lands draw, 2 Clifftop Retreats, 2 temples. Now, Corey's a bit slow here. We saw them Huntmaster. I mean, that's the best part. But turn 3, Commune with Dinosaurs. You know, nothing like 20 power that we saw in the semis.
Oh, no.
But it looks like he has, you know, his opponent hasn't cast a spell yet.
To be fair,
we're okay.
12 power on turn 3 is still live.
Yes.
If he just has Marauding Raptor, Land, Rotting Regisaur.
Finds Overgrown Tomb. Colors should be set. Huntmaster attacks.
I take it back.
I think this is a bit slower of a turn then. Overgrown Tomb tapped. No Regisaur. Yeah, this is the Guildgate draw, as you mentioned. No actual Guildgates, but all tapped duels.
Sometimes your mana's too perfect. I know that sounds silly, but there's a point where if one or two of these is a basic, this hand might be unbeatable for DelValle.
And I mean, that's why you keep it. You're one basic mountain from it being a great hand.
Exactly.
Choice of 2 drops. He has 10th District Legionnaire, Adonto Vanguard, and Dreadhorde Arcanist. He's going to go, looks like toward the, it's between Arcanist and Legionnaire. Aurelia in the hand. Now, we don't know that Aurelia is set up for next turn because, again, the next land enters the battlefield tapped. Does look like Nico goes for the Legionnaire and the 2 damage. What do you think was the argument for Arcanist there?
So the big thing is if you have something like, if you think the way that you win this game is a removal spell off the top, or you think that that is particularly important, then making sure that you can develop your Arcanist out first is going to be a big deal. There's also the point where the number of turns that Arcanist actually gets to attack and accrue some sort of value closes pretty quickly against something like Jund Dinosaurs, where blockers start hitting the battlefield immediately.
5 mana. Here's a Regisaur. It is Regisaur Alpha. Both get haste 7 damage. Nico down to 12. Back to Nico we go. Prison Realm. On the Regisaur. I mean, you can't let all of Corey's creatures have haste. This makes sense, but Nico's cards are just a bit small here. Attacks for 2. He's set to take some damage.
Yeah, he is catching up, though, if he can find a feather to pair with that God's Willing in his hand.
It feels like he's just hoping Corey has no more threats, because, you know, one more large creature, and this is out of range.
Oof.
I think Corey has a Galta, so removing, you know, Prison Realm, great draw.
Yeah,
glad he had one.
Heads up play to deal with the 4/4.
And now see consulting with teammate Shaheen Soorani. It feels like any creature here can make things tough for Nico. So is Corey going to try to commune, maybe? Find a Rotting Regisaur, something like that. Maybe Ripjaw Raptor here.
Leaning towards Raptor is the assumption.
Yeah, that would be 3 mana now. Otepec Huntmaster, making it cost 1 less. That would put Nico down to 5. And actually, we see Savage Stomp.
Oh, wow.
So he's paying full cost on Savage Stomp to answer the Legionnaire, and now attacks for 5, and Nico's down to 7.
This is interesting.
Yeah, it kind of suggests Corey doesn't have any more threats in his hand.
Right, and doesn't want to be as weak to something like Reckless Rage.
But Interestingly enough, we see Baffling End on Nico's draw. Corey has 5 power. Dinosaurs cost 1 less. So that's 6. If everything stays on the board, I think he can cast Galta.
Ooh.
Yeah, he'll have enough mana. Now, big update. Shaheen Soorani, 2-0 winner on the modern table. So pressure is on to Nico. See, now talking with Ben Ragan, Nico needs the comeback to keep them in the tournament.
You see everyone crowding around the standard table knowing just how much rides on this match.
So, and I like it, Baffling End. This was the right call. If he did not remove the Huntmaster, he was going to get Galta'd.
Yep.
Dreadhorde Arcanist. No spells in graveyard yet, and Nico's going to take another hit of 3. It's still on the ropes.
And this is a big show of patience on Nico's side. So this is specifically exiling the haste enabler and cost reducer rather than the 3-power creature, which Arcanist could have blocked. This is a lot of respect for
going
Galta.
To 4 just because he can't beat things with haste.
Right, and he knows he has an Aurelia hanging out in his hand that can stop most of the reasonably sized dinosaurs. It's making sure he doesn't just get, for lack of a better term, clowned by Galta.
Right. If Galta hits the battlefield, it's going to be tough. Even on an untapped, Nico, unless he has another Prison Realm, can't really answer the card. He has to, as we mentioned before, remove all the creatures on the way up.
Oh.
Savage Stomp number 2 from Corey swings in for 4. Nico down to 3. Now this is a lethal token. And remember, it has Trample.
Oh my gosh.
Back to Nico we go. Adanto Vanguard, now he's at 3. Not looking particularly good in his hand.
Oh.
Draws a 5th
this 5th land is actually huge.
So here's Aurelia. 2/5 blocker. That actually just can block Aurelia. Exemplar of Justice. Has God's Willing up.
Oh
he needs
gosh.
to fade another draw here, at least from Corey. Can he do it? 4 mana on Corey's side. Going to be Ripjaw Raptor, but it does not have haste.
Okay.
The Master's gone, but this is 2 lethal attackers for next turn. Nico's going to have to do something. Now, Aurelia can give a creature vigilance if it's white on the attack, so he can start to chip in some damage here while he stays alive.
And it looks like he has a Dreadhorde Arcanist and 3 God's Willings in hand.
Well, that's going to keep him alive for a while.
The problem is that this Ripjaw Raptor was going to draw a card even if Nico blocks it.
Right. So Aurelia gives herself +2/+0 in vigilance, so damage for 4. Here is Adanto Vanguard and Dreadhorde Arcanist. It looks like it's 2 God's Willings and then the Vanguard, which I actually like
That's
more.
actually a good bit better here because that's more things that can start attacking.
Right. Unfortunately for Nico, none of his creatures can actually kill an attacker on the block. And he can God's Willing to save some of them, but he will lose some creatures.
Right. Everything has at least 4 toughness. It's 1 power, 2 power, and 1 power here.
Yeah, and Ripjaw Raptor will draw cards, so a lot still has to go right for Nico. Has to dodge some things too, right? Collision, Colossus, that'll just win. Otepec Huntmaster, that's terrifying, because now other cards will have haste. Corey gets Galta onto the battlefield. It's not lethal this turn, but next turn it's going to be. So this attack should force some blocks already. And honestly, I think we're going to see Nico God's Willing just for the Scry one.
You have to. This Dreadhorde Arcanist can theoretically buy back God's Willing anyway. You need something nice here.
Well,
you need the other copy of Prison Realm or something to check this Galta.
So Prison Realm is a 1-of.
Oh, I thought he'd win in his main deck.
No, it's the only one. So there isn't another one to draw to.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think there's a way to pick up the one on the battlefield either. So maybe, can he draw to... What about doing, can he draw to lethal damage? Some Defiant Strikes, some shocks?
So, theoretically, we can put Aurelia in front of the 4/4 Trample, Dreadhorde Arcanist in front of Ripjaw Raptor, and then if you... God's Willing
battle.
if you also have your Adonto Vanguard left over at the end, and you Defiant Strike Aurelia 4 times and Gird for Battle, and then put the +1 counter on Dreadhorde Arcanist, which then also flashes back Gird for Battle, you could probably cobble together 12 damage.
This is where it starts. Block here. Has to block Ripjaw Raptor. God's willing. He keeps the Vanguard. Vanguard attacks better. Corey will draw a card. Raptor took damage. And Nico stays alive for 1 turn. Maybe. See what depends what Corey drew. Okay, post-combat, land and pass.
All right. Impress
Here
me,
we go.
he says.
Yeah, 1 turn. Remove Galta if you can. We don't think he can.
1 shot. 1 opportunity. Trying to figure out if an upkeep God's Willing is the thing to do here.
If that can do anything here. Yeah, there's just not another card that can do it here. So upkeep God's Willing on Adonto Vanguard. There's creatures of 2 different colors in play.
You probably just have to name green because you can at least hope to rip a removal spell or something that can deal with this Huntmaster.
He names green. Well, when he attacks, he can give it protection from red with Dreadhorde Arcanist.
True.
But it's not enough damage. You can mentor, so that's 8. But he needs 12. He needs 4 more, and he can't do it. He extends the hand, and it is going to be the win. Corey Baumeister takes game 3.
What?
And he